take refuge in the community of all life. As I take refuge in the truth, my safety comes as I take refuge in God. All temptation and all distraction is nothing more than some form of trying not to believe that I'm safe. To be looking here and there for safety. To avoid guilt or project it onto others. This is a distraction. Distraction from the peace that resides within. I am safe. I'm safe and sound. There is nothing that can really disturb my peace. Nothing that can upset me in any way. Centered in the larger self, we're actually in charge of creation. Not alone, not in ego, not in personality, all those powerless states, but centered at peace in the larger self, safe and sound. Here we realize that God's will is our will. That God wants us to be healed. To be healed of all disturbance. So we say to ourselves, our safety comes from us. Our safety comes on the inside, and it cannot come from anywhere. There he was sitting with his brother at a table across the way. And so I didn't try to approach him then. I just bought breakfast for him and left without him even actually seeing me at first, right? So I left. And I'll be doggone if he didn't call me. And he had seen me walking out the door, and then he found out his check was paid for, and he said, "You know what? You're persistent." And so I got the first one, and then I got all of them. So persistence, this is a good thing no matter what. If we have a focus, if we have something it is that we think is important, and that we're, and making a living is kind of important. But now, this is like goes right along with this idea of that we have to have first things first, though. First things first has to be that, well, God first. This was in the God first, right? The meaning, the unity of all life first. That's got to be like the number one thing. So we begin with this idea of I'm going to give service to life, knowing without question that life is going to give service to me. This is just how it works. And it's only when I try to withhold then that life withholds from me. So we have a purpose. We have a purpose of service. This is what we talked about last week. That this is our
what the raison d'etre, the reason for being. So it says in the Course in Miracles that we have a function, and that our function is, well, it says a number of different things, but it's all the same thing. And at first you don't realize it is, but it says your function is forgiveness. Your function is to forgive the world. Your function is to be the light of the world. So this is our function. And so this comes first, right? The idea is that we are going to shine. That we're going to shine. And that shining then is the forgiveness of all of the suffering that we see, that we observe. We shine it away. Let's see right here. Let me just take a look here. So driven to distraction.
This is the problem. This is the problem, is that these things keep popping up into my mind trying to get in front of my purpose. These things keep popping up trying to get, and then what ends up happening is my job then, which before, whatever my job is, like my job before as being a salesperson, my job was, my employer would have said that my job was to sell his stuff, right? And there was some kind of idea about we want to give good service and all that kind of stuff. But as far as he was concerned, the job was to sell stuff. And if I start thinking that I don't have enough,
if I start believing that, oh man, this week's paycheck is not going to be, well, because in those days I worked on straight commission. I think that's correct. I know a lot of people don't even want to think about that, but that was motivating for me. Anyway, I start thinking about the commission check's not going to be big enough this week, and all of a sudden this distraction of being afraid of lack, it tempts me to forget about the first purpose, about the primary purpose. And so in the 12-step fellowships, there's a sixth tradition that talks about the things that distract. And the things that distract are money, property, and prestige. So lack, the thought that there's a lack of money leads to a pursuit of money at the expense of the purpose, right? The thought that I don't have enough stuff, and here's another distraction. All day, every day, you're looking at, well, maybe not you, but man, the TV's on here quite a bit. We're looking at the television, and the television is reporting all of the things that you need, that you must have. And of course, all of this whole idea about property being something attractive. And I am thinking that the problem is, well, let me go to the solution first. The solution is,
I don't think I really need to own anything. What if I thought about these things that come into my life as that I don't have to own them, I don't have to, I guess I could say, rule over them as if they are my kingdom. I do not have to own them, but I can think about them as given to me in trust. They're given to me. I am going to be the steward of these things. And being the steward of these things means that I am going to care for them, which this could be a good thing too, to take care of the things that come into, that come to me for my use. And then when I have no more need of them, I'm going to pass them on. Easily, freely, right? So to be here is what has happened. Money and property have put us into a position where we think where we are driven to pile up more of it, instead of thinking in terms of what we actually need to do what it is that we need to do. And listen, there's nothing wrong with having money. Money is good. It's neutral. It's neutral.
And it just really depends on how we think about it as to whether it's going to cause suffering or whether it's going to actually be the means for the good that we want to do. The point of the talk today is that I don't want to, there's nothing wrong with having, you know, it's probably a good thing if you're debt free. Probably a good thing if you have some things that really give you enjoyment. I would, you know, this is something. Throughout my life, I'm like a car guy in that I notice cars. I know about them. Can't fix any of them. Don't ask me to do any of that. But I know about them. When I see a car, I know what year it is. I actually know what the car is, going back far back, and I always wanted to drive a nice car. And so, you know, after I got clean and started to have some success, I was able to get a new car. This was great. I loved having a new car. It's fantastic. And I almost thought about it as the first time I was able to buy a new car. The first time I thought, the words actually echoed in my mind, you have arrived. You have arrived. And then, as I'm driving down the road, not too long after I got the new car, I saw another car that I kind of liked better than the car that I had. And this is what's happened throughout the years. Every time you get a new thing, it's cool, and then you see somebody else got one that's cooler. And this is the problem. If I'm distracted and what I want to do is I just want to have a new car so I can be cool, there's always going to be somebody cooler.
Always.
It's always going to show up this way, right? However, if I want to buy a new car, a specific car, because I really enjoy driving this particular type of car, I like the feel of it. It can get me in trouble too. I want to go too fast in certain situations. But if I'm enjoying myself, if I'm in the flow of life driving the car, and I'm not worried about who's looking at me and seeing that I'm driving a cool car, this is the distraction. Worried about what other people are saying, what other people are thinking. It's the prestige of the car. This is the problem. This is the problem. Because it distracts me from my purpose. But if I am able to drive and get in that zone of driving and just enjoy the feel of it, the whole thing, just to be totally relaxed into it, all of a sudden my mind becomes open. In the midst of that activity, that driving of the car becomes like a meditation. Remember, there was a movie years ago called Chariots of Fire, and it was about this guy and his sister, and they were going to be missionaries. But the guy was really a fast runner. And somebody saw how fast he could run, and they talked him into competing in races, and then he ends up in the Olympics. And his sister says, "But listen, we had agreed that we were going to be missionaries. Like this is their deal, right? Their purpose. They're going to be missionaries." And he says to his sister, he says, "Yes, but God made me fast. God made me very fast. And when I run fast, I feel the pleasure of God." So when we're good at stuff, right? When we're good at stuff, that's a gift from God. This is a gift that God has given us. And what we're supposed to do with it is do the good thing for its own sake, but also it turns out that when we do, it is a gift to others. And this really is what our service is all about. It's about giving to life. It's about giving to the community, the larger community. So, and one of the things that we're doing here is there's this message, and the message here at One Spirit is like this very simple message. I say it every once in a while, and it's a progression. God is all. God is all there is. God is all there is, and nothing else is. It's all the things you're afraid of, all the things that you think are evil, illusions, distractions from our purpose. I know, it's heretical. It's
It's disturbing to think about. Go through my whole life thinking that I'm fighting, it's good, fighting against evil. So let me be clear about it. I want to be clear in what I'm saying. I want to be clear in what I'm presenting. Because truth cannot be watered down and still be true. So yes, it'd be, easier to go along, to get along. Sometimes it seems expedient to give people the message they want. Let's not do it. Let's be absolutely unequivocal. Give it to them straight. The message is simple and clear. God is one, and we are one with God.
Life is one, and we are one with life. Creation is one, and we are one with creation. One message, 3 ways that I just said it, but many more. And every week, this is what I do: is I try to figure out a way to say this in a different way. We can communicate
our point in the way that is most comfortable to the listener, but we should not change the actual message. So this is like this big principle: meet people where they're at. Meet people where they're at, but don't lie to them. Don't say something just so that they're going to feel a little bit better. We don't have to say it out loud most of the time. We can just think it. We can think, or like we talked about last week, we can shine it at them. Think it and feel it. And since minds are joined, it will be thought and felt by those who need to connect with it. Regardless of how we share the message, we must never allow ourselves to be false. Even if it means that we might not be personally approved of or even accepted. So distractions are happening all the time. And we have these great little techniques that we use, and they turn out to be timeless and universal. And the first one is just the breath. As soon as a distraction pops up, and the distraction is always about this, it's always about lack, it's always about thinking I need something that I don't have. It just distracts us all the time. It could be approval, it could be a thing, it could be, but it causes a little bit of disquiet within us. And this is the idea of being driven to distraction. This is the feeling that we get, somehow we are pushed. And this is what has happened. If we look at the world, our consumerism is a cancer that is eating the world. It's a cancer that is eating the world, but it's also eating us up in our hearts. I'm going to think about being part of community. Breathe. Breathe. And then take refuge in the idea of what the Buddhists say, the Sangha, the community. The Baptists say the congregation. Take refuge in the congregation. Take refuge in the larger community. Take refuge in the principles, the scripture. The Buddhists say the Dharma. Take refuge in God. Somebody might say, ground of all being, creation. The lesson today in the Course in Miracles was about finding our safety, and that the only place we find our safety was within. That we can run around outside looking for things to make us safe, and they never work really, because we always have a sense it's not quite enough. We're not quite there. The lesson actually says, and this will be shocking to some, but not. Let me just bring it up here. It's so good. My salvation comes from me. Seems like a shocking ego statement. My salvation comes from me, but then it tells us that the me is part of God, and that cannot be separated from God. So this is it. All temptation is nothing more than some basic temptation not to believe the idea for today. Salvation seems to come from everywhere except from you. So too does the source of guilt. You see neither guilt nor salvation as in your own mind, and nowhere else. When you realize that all guilt is solely an invention of your mind, you realize that guilt and salvation must be in the same place, in your mind, in our shared mind. In understanding this, you are safe. We're all safe. The seeming cost of accepting today's idea is this: it means nothing outside yourself can save you. This is the distraction. We keep looking outside of ourselves to be saved. This, within, in our heart, where the presence of God resides. This is where our safety is. So the little tweet, I changed this tweet like 5 times today. It's gone out 5 different ways. Tried to turn the inside out and the outside in. Found there was no out. Just everything within. That's enough.